We're gonna work on priest. So for priest right now, as you can clearly see by the hsreplay stats. So I'm going to use this website. It's called hsreplay.net. It's great for statistics on the ladder or the arena. It's great for showing statistics on each class and whether any individual cards as well. So it's just a really good resource. I didn't mention it earlier, and I did mention it earlier, but I didn't show anything in detail. But I think today we'll go over some of the stuff in detail, so the video will be a little bit longer. So you can go here. You can filter by standard, wild, arena. So we go to arena. And you can see priest right now is the number three ranked class based on win rate. So win rates are based off of the statistics gathered by everyone that uses Hearthstone Deck Tracker, which is the program that tracks your deck list and your game replays. So you can generally assume that someone that is going the extra mile to download and use programs to track their deck is probably a better than average or below average player because they are probably a little bit more serious about the game. So we can assume that. So for the average or a slightly above average player, Priest is ranked third, slightly behind Rogue, basically identical, and both are slightly behind Mage. So Priest we can jump into right now as we pick Priest, and then we can go through how some of the win rates reflect our decision making and how everything kind of comes together. So let's just jump into it. We're going to pick Priest. Okay, let me trim this bad boy down. Okay, so we're picking Priest. Alright. Okay, there you go. So now you want to see, you get all the info here. You want to see everything. Deck win rate, played win rate, and times played. So times plays give you how much of a sample size you're working with. Generally, anything over 10,000 I think is reasonable. At least it's somewhat accurate. Deck win rate and played win rate they kind of mean different things. So play win rate means whenever you play the card, how often are you winning. Deck win rate, how often do you win with the card in your deck. So this could be in your hand as well, obviously. Like draft, it basically means when you draft this card, how often does your deck how well does your deck perform? The percentages are not super important. You just use them relative to each other. So if you have a 60% card versus a 59% card, then you know one is probably better than the other, for example. So for the first pick here, you can compare all three of these cards, but personally I would pick the Orc right away. I just think like a 6 health taunt is super reasonable. The Initiate is super solid, but I think it's probably in a different class it would probably be better. But I think Orc is really good. It's very likely to stay around even after one turn. So I mean, for example, we can use this as an example and look up the cards here. So you can use Orc and Initiate. And then we can go by deck win rate. So Orc is 59%, and then we can go by Initiate, which is 56.7. Play win rate, Orc is also higher than the Initiate. So if you got both of these win rates favoring one card, it's generally probably correct in a one-for-one comparison. Obviously, other things like curve and like strategy and what your deck overall needs obviously make a big difference in how you assess the value of the card. So before I go ahead and pick this for Priest, I want to make a couple comments on the meta about Priest right now. So Priest being top 3, it basically plays similar to Mage in that they have the ability to outlast you, um, but Mage is a bit more consistent because they have generally better cards more often, and their hero power is just better. So if you're playing Priest against Mage, someone will eventually have to be the aggressor in the matchup, because if you both have very strong value or control decks, one deck will have to give up that role first and start going face. So it's interesting for Priest because Priest generally doesn't have a very good early game or aggressive plan. They have generally very good late game plans, but right now Mage is a very, very strong contender to having even stronger late game than Priest. So when you're drafting Priest, you kind of have to assess where you are in your draft, whether your deck can even handle like that kind of situation where your deck has to be in a control matchup against another control matchup. So you basically like, do you have the ability to be aggressive against a stronger control deck? Whether it be a stronger priest, whether it be a stronger mage, or whether it be another class that somehow has a really high value threshold as well. Like Druid can do it too. Druid has very strong value cards. Rogue occasionally has very strong value cards, but generally Rogue is the aggressor as well. So Priest is a little bit tricky. We do have to assess where you are in the draft and what you want to do. Obviously, this applies to every single draft, but I think in Priest it's a little bit more dicey, just because naturally for Priest you always side on heavier, value-oriented, late game-oriented, control-oriented style. And when that style doesn't come together in the draft, you kind of have to abandon it and look for something else. So we'll see how this draft goes, and then maybe we'll get an example here or there. All right, but in the meantime, we'll reset. I'm happy to pick the Orc here. Shadow Weaver should be the best pick here. Just based on overall quality, we can do this for a couple picks. I think it's pretty close anyways. We got Shadow Weaver 57.4, Gyrocopter 56.5, and then even the Shadow Weaver is better as a played card as well. So it also depends on personal playstyle. Like I immediately gravitate towards the Shadow Weaver because I think it's super good, but I do like the Gyro in Priest a little bit more because they do have buffs. So you can play this with a buff like Apotheosis or Grave Runes. Grave Runes is very strong with Gyrocopter. But I mean, this card is just generally a more consistent, more playable card. Instantly neutralizes one of the biggest minions in the game, Proto Drake, which is a huge problem. So it's a very good card for that. My first instinct goes to Death. Madness is great. It's a nice swing card, but I think having just one thing to deal with a big thing is very important. Occasionally you don't end up with the right removal tools, and then you're really sad that you passed the first Shadow Word Death here. So going by the win rates again, you got Shadow Word Death at 58.1, and then Shadow Madness not too far behind. The card is actually closer than I thought it would be, 57.9. So I think we're still going to be okay with the Shadow Word Death. It was our first gut instinct, but obviously Shadow Madness is still a very, very strong card. Which one drop is better, right? This one should be better. You generally don't really care too much about having one power right away on turn 1, and this card is just really strong when it wakes up on turn 3. So pretty easy pick here. We can compare this really quickly as well. As you can see, Homunculus is significantly better. Both played and deck win rate better than Mermy here. Alright, similar situation here. We know that Death and Madness are very similar. How do they stack up against Holy Ripple? I would assume that Ripple would not perform as well as Death here. Or even Shadow Madness. Yeah, Holy Ripple is not as good. Also, cards that are AoE or removal, they have pretty skewed played win rates because you basically only play them when you're in trouble. So when you play them, the odds of winning are already lower because you're in trouble. So don't look at played win rate with 100%. Like these stats are basically, they're not 100% accurate. They're just how you want to decipher what they actually mean. But basically cards with high play win rates, they might be situational cards that you only play to end games, or they might be situational cards that you only play when you're really behind. So if you look at a card like Deathwing, where you would only play Deathwing in situations where you are very behind and you are about to lose, Deathwing has a very low played win rate. However, the fact that Deathwing can win in those spots shows how powerful Deathwing is, because even though he has a low played win rate, when you play him, you still can win, and you only really play Deathwing when you are very badly losing. So that kind of shows how strong Deathwing is, but the win rate percentage does not show that Deathwing is that strong. So definitely take some time to decipher it. If you guys have questions, I mean, by all means, put it down in the comments. But I'm going to pick Shadow Madness here. It's kind of a little bit of an extra variety. Priest always runs into issues where you have too many removals and not enough situations to use the removals. So having different removals for different situations definitely helps. Cards like Discover really help Priest because Discovery gives you the option and flexibility to discover the card you need in a specific situation. So. But right now we don't have any Discover, so we're going to try to be a bit more flexible with our picks. I like Conscriptor here. It's the one that gives you value, right? The Lackey is very high value. I think in this expansion meta, the Lackeys are actually falling off a little bit because there's so many other cards that give you such insane value. The Lackeys are not as important as they were in the previous expansion for value. But I think this card is still better than these two. The 1-drop is kind of mediocre, and the 4-drop is usually pretty vanilla, just a 4-mana 5/4. So we just go to the Conscriptor here. Remember, we want to maintain a good early game curve while having the ability to play like a later game. So we want our late game to be basically like premium minions, as well as cards that can discover or generate late game for us. And then we just have cheaper cards that help us curve out so we don't lose the early game as well. I think the meta is very much still tempo oriented, so that means putting things on the board, but having the ability to generate things for the late game is also very important, so we have to keep that in mind. Soldier of Fortune in this meta is actually really not that good. Giving your opponents coins to trigger Spell Burst is really dangerous. So I think we're just going to go with the Scale Rider here. It's a decent 3-drop with Dragon Synergy, and Priest does have Dragon Synergy hits. Dragon hits, so you definitely want that in your. You definitely will draft dragons in your deck, and this is a pretty good 3-drop to synergize off of that. We got 3 premium taunts here. We're gonna have a quick look at the win rates. I think Senior might be the best, but Senior 59.3, Vanguard 58, Draconid 56.6. Interesting how Draconid is so much worse than the other two. What is the difference here? The difference might just be that the 7 health on turn 7 might not be enough. So 410 is the second best, and then the Senior is the best. To me, the Senior is the best card. So we might need to Yeah, I mean, Senior is a very good card. It has Death Rattle synergy, so you can hit it with cards like Grave Rune or Reborn from free spells, and then you get extra value from it. The high health is good because you can heal it and stuff. So Draconid probably is bad in Priest because you can't heal it, so you can't get more and more value out of it. But we'll go with the Senior here. Alright, similar situation. So we have a good 1-drop, a generic 2-drop that gives you value, but gives your opponent value too. And then we have a 5-drop that discovers you a spell. So, like I was saying, we want good early games so we don't fall apart early. And we want cards that discover value cards. So with Priest has really, really strong spells, spell selection. So having a card that helps you discover spells for situations is great. If you need value, you can take cards like Renew or Thought Steal. If you need AoE or single target large removal, you can take that as well. But Scrolls, I mean, it's one of the few Discover cards available to Priest, giving them access to all their spells. So it's a very solid card. Spell damage is relevant if you get like Holy Nova, Holy Smite. So definitely a very, very good card here. For interest's sake, we can quickly go over the win rates. Yeah, as you can clearly see, it's one of the best cards for Rogue. So very, very strong card. 59.4 win rate. Alright, easy renew here, I think. Like I was saying, discovery spell, cheap spells that give you value, give you access to your premium cards. I don't think we ever passed this for this kind of stuff, so you have a 5-drop taunt, a 6-drop taunt, and a small removal card. Looking at this deck right now, you can probably go with any one of these. However, I would probably go with either the Holy Smite or the Fen Creeper over the Safeguard, just because we do have a Senior on turn 6 already. So the thing with turn 6 is that you can only play one a turn. So even on turn 10, you can only play one. So you don't want too many of these turn 6 mana minions, unless they're like really premium. And Safeguard is not really a premium 6-drop. Like there's better 6-drops, right? So having a 5-drop is fine as well. Like yeah, you can play 5-drop on turn 10, for example. Holy Smite's just good. Like it's an early game card that helps you maintain your early game. We can kind of afford to take both. I feel like maybe the Holy Smite's better here. We can have a quick look at the overall win rates of all these cards. Yeah, so you have very poor win rates for Safeguard and Fen Creeper, and you have Holy Smite. So taunts are also another thing, another card that kind of gets bad with played win rate. They get a bit lower played win rates because basically you only play taunts when you're kind of behind and dying. So usually when you play them, you're not going to be in a very, very good shape most of the time. But alright, let's go with the Holy Smite. We've been offered quite a few of these Homunculus and Gyrocopters. I think Homunculus is just excellent for your early game, so I'm pretty happy to take another Homunculus here over a Gyrocopter, which is again a 6-drop. It's decent, but we could probably hold out a little bit. The draft's still pretty early, so I'm pretty happy with the Homunculus here, just to shore up our early game. Unfortunately, no dragons, so Cleric of Scales is usually a pretty strong card if you have dragons, but right now we don't have any dragons, so that kind of sucks. Panthera is decent. You don't really want to use your hero power too much just to trigger the draw, because our hero power sucks most of the time, and you never want to use it in the early game unless you really have to. So unfortunately, we don't have any dragon synergy, so we can't just really jump into this 1-1 confidently for sure. I think Panthera is like kind of fine. You can have a quick look at Panthera. I think it's probably going to be okay. It's going to be an okay card. 57.8 versus, for example, we can do Scales. Cleric of Scales 57.4. So they're kind of similar. Panthera is probably a bit better just because you can play it on turn 2 as opposed to this being a 1/1. And without Dragon Synergy, this card definitely drops off in value as well. So drawing a card is never that bad for Priest because Priest always likes to have stuff in their hand too. Alright, so Penflinger versus Scarlet Crusader. I don't really like jumping into this kind of synergy, which we don't have any. We don't have any big spells yet, so this card's it's not necessary. Like we don't really need a card like this right now. So Penflinger versus Scarlet Crusader. We have 3/3 drops. They're not bad. Penflinger is a ping, which is actually pretty good for Priest because Priest can't ping. So we're happy to have a ping, right? So definitely we can afford to take both. We can maybe look at the win rates, see how important they are to the class. So Penflinger, actually the ping is very important. It looks like Penflinger is actually quite better than Scarlet Crusader. These might be like statistical anomalies, just because Scarlet Crusader doesn't have a huge sample size. But I'm not surprised that Penflinger would be better, just because giving a ping to a class without a ping, it helps them that much more. So it's definitely useful for them. It's a bit of a small card, so we do have to be careful with being too small. For Priest. Like I said, Priest generally has a very good late game plan, but their early game plan is not as good. Just because they can't really pressure and finish with reach, so they constantly need to pressure throughout the game without giving up the board. Because if they lose the board, they can't really finish games. So it's an interesting class that way, right? But we can go with the Penflinger here. I was going to side with this card too. You can always get reusable value as well from spells, which we do have some of. Alright. Shadow Word Death versus the 2/2 again. So we know clearly the Shadow Word Death is way better than the 2/2. It's just whether we want another Shadow Word Death. With 2 Homunculus, we're not really desperate for early games. So 2 Homunculus, you can play them on turns 1 or 2. They're not bad. So not too desperate for another 2 mana card. I think the Death is probably going to still be the card for us. It's a high value card, high tempo card as well. And I think it's just a better overall option here. We're halfway through the draft. We definitely need to pick up some minions and probably some kind of win condition. So it's not Talkspin because Talkspin's pretty bad. We don't have any Murlocs. So it's a minion versus Pain. So Bone Wraith versus Shadow Word Pain. I wouldn't be surprised if Bone Wraith is better because, like I said, removal is generally situational here. Yeah, it's Shadow Word Pain is down here, Bone Wraith is up here. So generally, like Bone Wraith is probably just better. It does have synergies with like Reborn and buffs and stuff, and Grave Runes for Priest. So the card does do a little bit better in Priest. It's also our only 4-drop right now, so that's also another consideration. The thing with Priest is that it's very easy to get too many spells. Too many spells, too many removals, too many like situational things, and then you basically have turns where you don't play anything. So you don't want to be like that, because I think this is not a meta where you can really sit back and relax. You still have to pressure your opponent. You can't really just sit there and try to answer everything they play, because eventually they're going to have a minion that you can't deal with, and then you're just going to eat a lot of damage. So having a minion to play is just good. Third death. Alright. Like, obviously this card is insanely powerful, but we can't really yeah, we just can't really get so many of these types of cards, right? It's just way too situational. So I think for us it's just going to be the Breath of the Infinite here. It's our first AoE, which is super fine. And yeah, we don't have any dragons right now, so it is what it is. Okay. And these are pretty low quality minions here. Hogsteed is usually okay. Hogsteed is usually okay. But the problem is we have so much of this small removal stuff that having like another small removal minion just feels kind of bad. But I mean, you have a Frost Element, 6-mana 5/5 freeze, when you can have a 3-mana 4/3 freeze. So I mean, even though the 5/5 is a little bit like just heavier card, maybe it's just the Hogsteed. It just helps your early game, right? You can also play it on turn 2 without much penalty, anyways. You can see that Hogsteed is a superior card too. So, all right. To me, it's a very easy Aeon Reaver. It's a similar effect to Death, but it leaves a 4/4 body behind. I mean, it's one of the best cards in this deck so far. Definitely want it here over the other two generic cards. Alright, we finally get something heavy. Finally get a heavier card. The deck is not very heavy. We don't have ways to discover heaviness. Renew gives us some heaviness. The Lackey potentially gives us some weight, and same with Scrolls, but that's definitely not enough for any kind of value-oriented build. So our decks right now is not heading into value versus value matchups. So we're probably going to have to be like the tempo or be the aggressor in those types of matchups. So having a big minion here is just good. I mean, it's just solid to finish games, go through taunts. You also need some weight here, so it's just the best card out of all of these. Like, you're not gonna pick a 2/3 here just because our early game is pretty solid, and we don't need like excessive 2-drops. Because if we only need 1 2-drop, right? We hit the 2 and then that's it. We don't want to play a 2-drop on like turn 8, for example. So you don't want to go overboard with that stuff. Yeah, there's not really much of an option here. I mean, Rager's fine. We do have 5 health, 6 health, so there's some good hits for it, but I mean, it's just the best card. These two are just awful. Okay, this is pretty tough actually. All three of these are really good. A ping for a class with no ping, AoE. So right now we only have Breath of the Infinite, which is basically this, but it's worse. And then Fishy Flyer, which is a really solid single target removal. I kind of feel it might just be Fishy Flyer. It's also a minion that you could play, and having just minions is just better than having situational cards where you can't play them. Of course, this is removal, but it's also a body as well. So right now we are sitting on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spells already. This would be 7th spell. You generally don't want too much spells. You generally don't want too many spells unless the spells can produce other spells or other value cards. I'm kind of not too sure here. I like both cards, but I think I might just take the Flyer. Yeah, win rates are saying Flyer. They're different cards though, so they're not necessarily comparable here. I do like the Flyer though. Alright, let's go with the Flyer. Oh dang. Actually good cards. Win condition cards now. This is tough. I think we go with the Draconid, but like a lot of times you want the Proto Drake from the Draconid, I think. Yeah, win rate wise, you want the Draconid. Both cards are great, but definitely this deck could use the Proto Drake as well, because it's just a big thing, right? But I think most of the time you're probably pretty close to guaranteed something big and usable from the Draconid studies. So it's like it kind of gives you some flexibility, allowing you to play a minion on 7, 6, 5, 4, like around there. So you don't necessarily need to be stuck with an 8-drop in your hand. So I think this card's a little bit better just because it's slightly more flexible, but I think most of the time you probably pick a card like Proto Drake from here. But I mean, at least you could play it on turn 7, I guess. So, I mean, yeah, it's fine. We're just gonna go with the Draconid here. Okay. Some really gutter cards. I mean, Wave of Apathy is actually a totally fine card. It can definitely win you a game here or there. It's just not anything too crazy, but it's better than the other two. So it's not a card that our deck needs. I love this Raise Dead card. It's so strong. For Priest, the ability to draw cards and generate cards is just incredibly good. So let's have a look here. I mean, it's 58.3. If you want to compare it to like comparable Priest draw cards, you probably go with like Thought Steal, and it's basically similar to Thought Steal, which is about right? Because you pay 0 mana for 2 cards from your graveyard, or you get 2 cards from your pay 2 mana for 2 cards from your opponent's deck. Sometimes you low roll when you have tokens and stuff, or even like the imprisoned guys are not very good because you don't really want them back. But like cards like the Lackey, cards like the Lackey generators, cards like Fishy Flyer, Aeon Reaver, just huge hits. Even like getting the senior back or whatever. So I think Raise Dead here is fine. It gives your deck a little bit extra value, and we're really just giving up a generic 4-cost taunt, so not really the end of the world if we pass this here, but I really like this card. Okay. I don't think this is going to be a mass resurrection deck. We don't have like really insane insane minions. Uh, Definitely not enough to consistently have 3 of them come out and be good. So stable hand has very sparse data, so we're not even going to use that as a comparison, I think. But it looks like it's a pretty easy bully here. Bully is just generic. It's a good 5-drop. Like even though like it's a 5/5, generally the 5/5 stat line on turn 5 is not super good because there's a lot of things that deal 5 damage. So you want them to have really good effects, like Big Ol' Whelp, draw a card. This card's good because it blocks battle cries, really messes up your opponent's turn. So I mean, it fits our curve as well, and we need a 5. It's so not too bad here. Oh, nice. Okay. I think we're happy with this. Mind Control 58.6 is pretty low win rate compared to the other top tier cards. Earlier we saw that Proto Drake was almost 60%, and Draconic Studies is over 60% win rate. So Mind Control doesn't seem as good as it was in previous metas. But it's still probably the best pick here by far. So it's still a pretty good pick, and it gives us something heavier too. Okay, so which Aug Merchant do we want? Divine Shield or Spell Damage? We don't have anything that really synergizes with Spell Damage, so I think Divine Shield is probably slightly better most of the time. I guess Holy Smite and Infinite for Spell Damage, but I don't think that's consistent enough. I think Aug Merchant here is just super good. The Divine Shield one, so for interest's sake, we can have a quick look. Oh, interestingly enough, the Ethereal Aug Merchant is slightly better. Interesting. So this one's slightly better. Interesting. Divine Shield. They don't like Divine Shield, eh? Okay. Well, maybe we'll give it a try then. I would think this one is better, but I guess we do have 2 cards that synergize with the spell damage here. Okay, let's try it. Second dragon, third dragon. Kind of interesting. Like I don't think we need another small removal card. The problem with small removal cards is that they basically go only 1 for 1 at best, and they only kill like a small thing. So having like too many of these small cards, like basically if you have like 5 Holy Smites, like that's a really small deck. You know what I mean? So it's like you don't want too many of these small cards. I feel like you probably want one of the 5-drop minions. This card is, I mean, we only have one card and a spell that synergizes with it, so it might not be the Chrono Breaker. But Tiger seems fine. Stealth is actually good because it allows you to trade, which Priest likes to do. Control the board, use your hero power to leverage value. So it has Chrono Breaker as slightly higher, but we don't have too many ways to synergize with it. So we only have Aeon Reaver and then one Draconic Studies. It might not be the pick here. But I guess it is an awkward card to play against. I'm not 100% sold on this card actually. I might just go with the Tiger. But it does synergize with other cards too. So Infinite, the AoE, and it's a Scale Rider as well. So it does help those cards as well. And then the potential upside of this card is quite strong. Yeah, maybe we jump into this card. Alright, let's go to the Chrono Breaker then. We only have one pick left. And it's gonna be an ugly one. It's gonna be an ugly one. Yeah, I think the healer here is perfectly fine. It's a 4-drop, we need it. I'm not a huge fan of Pain. We have lots of smallish cards to help deal with smaller minions. So usually use this to kill like a 3-3 or a 3-4. I think we're okay on that front. Yeah, healer is fine. This card is just awful. Alright. Alright, so I mean this draft isn't super great. It's a little bit small, but the early game seems quite good. Like we have 2 Imprisons. We have a bunch of ways to get on board early. Our 3-drops are generally pretty good. Manus is good at controlling the early game. And then we have various minions on most of the mana curve, right? Our top end's a little bit weak unless we get some pretty lucky renews or the Draconic Study or the Raised Dead. So we do have a little bit of value to finish games. But I'm not 100% sold on this deck. It could be surprising though. I mean, it could surprise. That's the thing. It has the removal cards. It has the mind control. It has AOE. It has consistent early game cards. So I think it can surprise, but it definitely doesn't look like a powerhouse deck. But I think it's close. It probably needs like maybe one more Draconic Studies, and maybe like a good 7-drop or a good 8-drop. So something like that, but I think this deck's pretty close. We can see how it goes, but for now this is just a draft only video, so I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one.